Hello, everyone. I'm here with Angela Watson, who is VP of International Sales for the Americas region at UPS. Welcome to our interview. Angela, so tell me a little bit about how you got involved with UPS and why you've stayed here.
Well, that's an interesting question. When I was finishing up my undergraduate degree at the University of Kansas, I had a friend who said, "Hey, you should come work for UPS. It's a great company." So I said, "Okay, sure." And I went as a part-time employee. I was finishing up school, and they came to me and they said, "Hey, have you ever thought about a career in sales at UPS?" And I said, "What do you sell?" Now, keep in mind, this is back in 1990. So long story short, here I am 28 years later, still in sales at UPS.
Good, great. I love to hear about longevity in business, right?
Absolutely.
And corporations. So we'll get right into the questions.
Sure.
So the first question, from your perspective, why is there still inequality in the workplace?
You know, it's interesting. I think there's been a lot of significant progress in this area. I really do. And I think it's because a lot of companies, especially your Fortune 500 companies, are really working to focus a strong effort in trying to improve those equalities. They put together a lot of programs, some that are working very well. I think a big effect on the success of these programs has to do with, for example, flexibility in the workplace. You know, that whole family work-life balance. That's something that I think is critical, and a lot of companies are focusing on that. There are many companies who are continuing to focus on strong mentorship programs. So I think that is something that's been successful for developing these taking away the inequalities, if you will. I think also I'm seeing more and more companies get women more involved in the succession planning. And I think that's important too, is you've got to have women at the table to have a voice in those decision making. But really, more than anything, it's got to be a strong organizational focus on an effort to drive change. And you can't just say that you have a program in place and expect that it's going to work unless you're really focused on measurable activities to drive change. You're never going to drive that change. So I think those are things that are being done to really improve the situation.
Beautiful. So it sounds like it starts from the top down, and there's some metrics in place to
Absolutely.
Make sure that things get done.
Absolutely, that's right.
Great. Okay, so the second question, how are companies like UPS embracing women employees, suppliers and vendors, C-suite decision makers?
So, you know, I mentioned mentorship earlier. Mentorship is alive and well at UPS, and I think that's been one of the areas where we've had the most impact. But we're also looking at trying to do some really what I would think are kind of unique out of the box thinking. So, for example, just recently we brought together a group of young women, or I should say young in their career, who we are looking to develop in certain areas. And we said, what can we do to really drive change massively? And we've done a couple of workshops. So we started out and we said, okay, how can we focus an effort on certain target areas, like building your brand? That's an area where these women told us that that's something they wanted some help with. So we created these workshops, and quite frankly, the change that we have seen in such a short period of time, it's paying dividends. It really is, and I'm very excited about that. But not only has it done that, what that has allowed us to do as we bring these women together is not just develop them, but also it's given us, some of those of us in senior leadership positions, an opportunity to see these women in a different environment that's very different than your normal day-to-day activity. And it's helped us see a whole lot more in them than we ever would have had in a normal situation. So I think that is something that has been really important for us. And I think that those types of programs will continue to help us be successful.
Again, it sounds like a win-win-win.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So as a female in a leadership role, what is your approach to mentorship?
So I would say informal mentorship I've found to work better for not only the mentee, but also the mentor. And I think as a mentor, what I've always tried to do is help these people, whether they're men or women, see that, you know what, mistakes are okay. We've all made mistakes. But if I can share with you some of the pitfalls and some of the opportunities that I have learned and I have gained by making those mistakes, maybe I can help you avoid those in the future. And I think it's really important for us to share those learnings with the young people, like I said, whether they're male or female. I've also spent a lot of time as a mom who not only works but has a family of trying to help people understand that you can have both. You can have that balance in life. It is important to have balance between work and your personal life. And what I've also shared with a lot of people is that when I was early on in my career, someone very high in our organization, from our management committee, she gave me some advice one day. And she said, Angela, there are going to be days where UPS has to be the priority. It just is. But there's also going to be days where your family has to take priority. And it's really important that you figure out what that balance is. And I think that's a piece of advice that has always stuck with me. And it's something that I feel compelled that I have to share with others, because I think that is so important to have that balance in life.
Beautiful, very wise. That person was very wise, and you're carrying it forward.
Absolutely.
Great. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Generation X and Y.
Okay.
Right? So more and more Generation X, Y are replacing baby boomers in leadership roles, and millennials are an important percentage of the workforce.
Right.
What are the opportunities and or the challenges that women face in this shifting cultural leadership? And more importantly, how can women benefit from a more diverse generational mix?
Boy, that's a very interesting question. And that's one that I'm experiencing right now as we speak, and I'm visualizing. And I've done a lot of thinking about this. And you know, what's interesting is I find that the younger generation today, they have a lot of confidence. And I think that's fantastic. And I know I can see now, because I have kids, I can see where this is coming from. They have great presentation skills, many times much better than their counterparts who've got a lot more experience, especially at this stage in their career. You know, I find that kids are being asked at a young age to develop business cases, to present them in front of their class. I find that they're asked to work in group settings to help teach them how to work through those challenges when you're in a group environment. You've got to hold your teammates accountable. You got to make sure everybody does their fair share of the work. And as we teach our kids to do this at a younger age, it really helps prepare them for things that I was never prepared for, maybe you were, but I find that those attributes really provide some great qualities in this younger generation. Now, at the same time, there are some challenges, you know, and they're all challenges that we can work through and overcome. But some of these folks in the younger generation have had a lot of success early in their career, and they thrive on that. But I also find that sometimes they struggle a little bit when it comes to defeat, or when it comes to things that don't happen in their timeline, like promotions, for example. So these are all nuances of that generation that we can work through, because I'd much rather have all the great things that they bring forward. But they do have some challenges that again are posed when we look at this generation.
Well, I'm impressed by your answer, because very often, you know, in the conflict that occurs is the intergenerational conflict, right?
Absolutely.
But the way you answered says, let's look at the benefits.
That's right.
Of both, and work on those disadvantages, because I guess you're like me and you think that the advantages far outweigh the disadvantages.
That's right. And I know a lot of people really struggle with that. A lot of people really struggle with the differences, but the reality is we're in an environment today where we have to embrace those differences, and we have to look at our leaders of the future and how do we help develop them.
Okay, so from a leadership perspective, what did you do differently from other female colleagues when you started your career that allowed you to get to your current position, and maybe other females didn't grow as much as you did?
You know, I'm sure there's probably a lot of things, but what I would say is I think it's really important that you always consider those opportunities that you have. Always take on the challenges that are put forward. Don't shy away from the unknown. While it might be a little bit scary, you know, never ever shy away from it. There's always going to be obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. There's always going to be situations that you wonder how you're going to get through, but don't ever give up. Always find ways to learn from these challenging situations. And I think that's some of the advice that I would probably give to this generation.
Beautiful. The studies have shown that women in general, I think it's all about confidence, right? Women in general need to feel much more confident than men in general when it comes to taking a step forward.
Agree.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's part of the reason why we talked earlier about the branding workshop. That's part of the reason why, you know, building that branding workshop is to help give that level of confidence.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
If you were mentoring your early days self, what areas would you focus on, and what pearl of wisdom would you give the younger Angela Watson who was just starting her career at UPS?
That's really an interesting question. There's probably a lot of pearls of wisdom that I would give, but I would say one of the things, a couple of them. Number one, don't ever say, I don't know, or I don't have the answer. Because more than likely, you know, whatever question is coming your way has been a problem, it's been a challenge. Always share that this is an area where we're exploring. There's more work that needs to be done. We need to solve for this, and we're on our way there. You may not have the complete answer yet, but you will have the answer. And I think you have to show the confidence in that level of understanding that there's still work to be done, right? We don't all have the answers. There's work to be done. It's all in how you communicate it. And I think another one that is really important that I have found has helped me along the way is always try to find ways for collaboration. Find ways to build consensus. Find ways to be, you know, a team player and draw out the best in everyone, because everyone has a lot to offer, and sometimes it's difficult to figure out what that is. But if you can find a way to collaborate and bring out the best in everyone within your team, I think you are going to be successful, your team's going to be successful, and the entire organization is going to be successful. Just my thoughts.
Great advice to your younger self.
Yes.
I think, you know, seeing where you are today, you probably had some future wisdom back then, right, to get you where you are today.
Thank you.
I want to, you know, on behalf of our viewers and listeners, say thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you to UPS for sponsoring this series. UPS is a great partner of women-owned businesses, and this is just yet another example of what you do for us. So thank you very much.
Well, you are quite welcome, and I've really enjoyed it, Nancy, and really appreciate you coming in today as well.
Great. Yes, absolutely.